Students, in this particular discussion, we'll finish the time division multiplexing concept. Before we do that, though, there is a digital signal service that telephone companies used for transmitting digital signals. And they've got a specific way of implementing this digital signal service using TDM. So let's go on to the slide and let's look at this digital signal service. Students, as you can see, in this particular case, the DS service, we have got multiple digital services and we have got a hierarchy that we have created similar to the analog hierarchy. The only difference is in this case we have got digital services instead of analog services. Students, using TDM, not FDM that we used in the case of analog hierarchy of analog telephone signals. In this case we are using TDM. We have got the first digital service as DS0, as you can see. And this DS0, it consists of a single digital channel of 64 kilobits per second. So each DS0 has a 64 kbps channel. So hence 4 kilohertz was the bandwidth of a voice signal in the analog format. हम लोगों ने study किया था. In the digital format, a single DS0, when this 4 kilohertz analog is converted to digital format, it will have data rate or a bit rate of 64 kilobits per second. Students, we combine 24 DS0s to make one DS1. And 24 DS0s, as you can see down here, makes one DS1, and DS1 is a 1.54 megabits per second service. Students, it is essentially 24 multiplied by 64 kilobits per second. So this 1.54 megabits is 24 channels multiplied by 64 kbps. This 64 kbps is our 24 DS0s. So DS0 has got its 64 kbps channel, so we multiply that and then we add some overhead. When you are combining DS0 channels, there is some overhead and you get out with a single DS1 which is 1.54 megabits per second. Students, we combine multiple 4 DS1s in this case to come out with a DS2 channel, and the DS2 is a 6.3 megabits per second service. Then we have 7 DS2s to come up with a DS3, and this is a 44.37 Mbps service. And finally we have got a DS4 which is 6 DS3s combined together, and it's a 274 Mbps service. Now students, in this slide you can see that we have got the services listed here: DS1, DS2, DS3 and DS4. Now DS or digital service is the name of a service. To implement these services, the telephone companies, they normally use T lines, and T lines are T1 to T4, as you can see. So digital service, DS is the name of the service, digital service, and T1 is the name of the lines that we use. A T1 line is 1.54 megabits per second. Our T2 is 6.3 Mbps. T3 is 44.7, and T4 is 274 megabits per second. And each one of them can carry a certain number of channels that you see in the last column. For example, if you've got 24 or less voice channels that you want to carry, then you can go and lease a T1 line from your telephone company, and that will be enough for you to carry that many voice channels. Depending upon the requirement of your voice channels, you have got this. Students, note that each voice channel is essentially our DS0 service. So 24 DS0s make up our DS1, and that is carried using a T1 line. 96 DS0s make up our DS2 service, and that essentially makes up our T2 line. Similarly, 672 DS0s make up our DS3 service, and 4032 voice channels or DS0 lines make up a DS4 service. Students, one last concept. We can also use the T1 line for analog transmission. And students, in this case, as you can see, we have got 24 voice channels, and we have got analog signals for each one of those channels, 4 kilohertz each. We use the pulse code modulation, 8 bits per sample, to convert them into the digital signal, 64 kilobits per second digital signal. I keep on repeating this, so please make sure that you remember this. In the analog format, the analog bandwidth of a voice channel is 4 kilohertz. When you do PCM, at 8 bits per sample. This is important. You come up with a digital channel which has 64 kilobits per second data rate. Students, goes into TDM, and we have got a T1 line which is 1.54 megabits per second, consisting of 24 DS0s or 24 channels of 64 kbps each. Students, it must be noteworthy that in this particular case, when telephone companies were able to use these T lines as analog carriers, then it opened up a new generation of telephone services, and the reason for that was the telephone companies now don't need to run 24 individual lines, for example, to carry 24 individual analog signals. They can just lease one single T1 line, and that T1 line will allow them to carry these 24 signals on or 24 voice channels on that one single T1 line. So a lot of cost saving for telephone companies when the TDM was available for digital lines.